Hello, friends, and welcome. I'm your co-host, Andrew Lazaga, here with Dubside.
And you're listening to the Dubcast with Dubside.
So, Dubside, did you receive your copy of the latest edition of the QAJAQ USA newsletter?
I have seen it, yes, and it has my article in it about Greenlandic music.
Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised to see that.
I was able to mention that there's two artists there that don't sing. They sing most of their stuff in English. They don't sing it in Greenlandic. You know, on the podcast here, I've been doing all of the Greenlandic singers, their stuff. But I did mention, so there's that guy, Simon Lunge and Nevi Nielsen. They're interesting. The article talks about their music.
It's good to have all this written down as a reference.
Yeah. Yeah, we have mentioned that Sounds of Greenland CD, which is a compilation of a whole bunch of artists. So the article in the newsletter gives you a rundown of each of the artists on there, and it shows you what their CD looks like. And so it gives you lots of reference points to check.
And for our listeners who want to check out the QAJAQ USA newsletter, it's online for free. And Dubside's article is Top Hits of Greenlandic Music. Dubside's curated list of artists to know and support.
Yeah, you don't even have to be a member to read it. QAJAQusa.org. QAJAQ.
In this issue, there's an article about three kayak builders titled Mind of the Maker, which features Chuck Smith, Christopher Crowhurst, who we've had on the show, and Sipke de Boer.
Sipke, yeah.
Sipke. As someone who has known builders and has built a handful of kayaks myself, these stories sound all too familiar and illustrate what I like to call the kayak builder's syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
There's this addictive quality to building kayaks, and people think they're going to build one boat, but they end up building multiple boats.
Yeah.
Continually improving the design, and then eventually running out of room, and then having to give away or sell their kayaks in order to make room for more.
Mm-hmm.
And just like learning rolling, eventually builders accumulate enough knowledge and experience are able to inspire and share that knowledge with others.
Yeah.
A lot of people start out thinking they're going to build one kayak, but then it becomes an all-consuming, life-changing experience, which I would say is not always 100% positive, because there are some trade-offs that need to be made, but usually the personal rewards are immeasurable.
Well, my corresponding infatuation has been the rolling in ropes rather than building kayaks. You know, I didn't have the space to build kayaks or the car to take a skinner frame around, but we all find our own obsession in the Greenland thing, one way or the other.
Yeah, it's all connected.
Another reason to check out the Masik newsletter, there's an article in there that talks about this guy, Bart Hathaway, who I mentioned back in Dubcast number 12, the Walden Pond Scum. And I just talked briefly about that. He was sort of the older guy who passed on ideas to the Walden Pond Scum guys. But that article in the Masik, this recent article by Dan Siegel, it gives you the full story. This guy Bart Hathaway was quite an amazing character. So that's a good read as well.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that article too. Okay. Well, we got a special episode recorded live.
Yes, indeed. This is the first live one. I have more remote equipment now, so I hope to do more of these kind of things.
Are we ready? All right. Sure. So we need some introduction music for the QAJAQ Dubcast. Welcome to the Dubcast with Dubside. This is a very special episode number 35, and as a new experiment, I am recording this in front of a live audience.
More special than the other episode.
I was going to tell everybody to say hi, but you all picked up on that already. Anyway.
It's the only episode 35 with a live audience.
Yeah. So this episode I will talk about, and we'll obviously we can hear some. We are on a outdoor deck in the back of a residence in the state of Virginia in the forest, and so you may hear some planes passing or trucks and cars or dogs barking or wind blowing, but that's just part of the ambience as I turn down the introduction music. So this particular episode, I'm going to talk about the intersection of cultures that occurs when two cultures meet, and the example I have will obviously be one of the cultures will be indigenous, that of the Greenlanders. And so sometimes, there's an imbalance in the two cultures, and there are positive and negative effects of this interaction. And I'm going to tell you about one particular one that had maybe more negative than positive that I was not too happy to be somewhat peripherally involved with. And you can see how that went. And in order to tell this story, I need to introduce two characters. And one of them is a guy named QAJAQ. QAJAQ Akustison is his full name. He's a Greenland guy, somewhat older than me. And QAJAQ was one of those people who was kind of in the periphery the first couple times I went to Greenland. Didn't notice him that much. And as time went on, I kept saying, oh, yeah, that guy, I remember that guy. He's been showing up. And some of the Greenlanders are very welcoming to us. The ones that speak English will talk to us. But some of them, they would be rather aloof, and you kind of couldn't get a read on, what's that guy thinking? And just sort of not really a welcoming presence. So you sort of got a little uncomfortable. You just couldn't get a read on some of these people. And QAJAQ was one of those guys. I just didn't really know where he was coming from, but he was just, quiet around me. And he would talk to the Greenlanders stuff, his people, but I sort of on the outside of that sort of thing. And QAJAQ was involved in the QAJAQ, one of the towns in Greenland, their kayak club. And the different clubs send their people to the national competition that happens every year, the thing that I would go to. And so QAJAQ was some years he was very involved in the QAJAQ club, and some years he wasn't. It sort of went back and forth. And he, like a lot of people in Greenland and in this country, they have very strong feelings about, the Greenland tradition and how to preserve it properly, and certain way that they think it should be done that sometimes is at odds with the way other people think it should be done. And so some days, some years he would be less involved, and some years he'd be more involved, and I think there was some internal controversy, and these things happen. Where he really shined, QAJAQ was in his element when the local radio station in Sisimiut, or sometimes the national station, would hire him to do commentary of the competition. And I think he had done some radio work before, and so he could talk about as they were doing it and give you the play-by-play, and I thought that really added to the event. In fact, I can give you some example of what that sounds like. Now, I can pick out words like Kingo Sakatona, that's a rolling competition. Fiatal, that's the age division, 20 to 34-year-old group. He's like Kununguak is one of the competitors. I mean, I've tried years to learn this language. I can't hold a conversation, but this is QAJAQ on the air. So he's Alia Mishlugu. That's the spine roll that they're getting ready to do. So he's calling out the names of the rolls. He's talking about the competitors. He's explaining what they're going on. So it goes on and on for several minutes. So I couldn't follow exactly what he said, but he seemed to be doing it in an intelligent way and really add to the competition. And people in the town would be listening to the radio. The competition goes on for a week, so they'd hear it on the radio, and then they'd come down to see what was going on, and just really added to the whole element. That's where QAJAQ did shine. His controversy in the club, it went back and forth, but he as a commentator, he was the man. I really appreciated what he could do. And the other character in this story is QAJAQ, which some of you probably have heard that name quite a few times. I've mentioned him quite a bit. QAJAQ is the guy who. He's had a very distinguished career in kayaking. Started when he was 12 years old, and then when he was 16, he won the competition, beating out the adults, and he's got something like 10 competition titles to his name. And he's grew up in Greenland, and he's lived in Alaska. He lived in the U.S. for a little bit. He moves around So some years he didn't go, but when he does go, he'll win if he competes. But sometimes he just helps out with the judging, or they're tired of him winning them all the time, so they'll try to make it so he can't compete. But QAJAQ, in 2017, he had decided to offer a trip for foreigners to come to Greenland. He would lead a trip, like a 5 or 6 day camping trip through the fjords and the islands and the icebergs, and then people would stay for the competition. And he asked me to help him with that, and I was quite happy. So we would lead this trip, and he had enough people signed up to make 2 groups of 6, so 6 at a time. So he figured, we'll take one group out before the competition starts. Then that group will be there for the week of the competition. The other group will come as the competition starts. And then the first group will leave. Then afterwards, the second group will take them out. So we'll be there for 3 weeks. And we've got these 2 groups going out. And the Greenlanders, maybe it's a stereotype. They're very much in the moment. And long-term planning might not be their focus. But QAJAQ, he stepped up to the task. He was on top of this, and he was working out the details. And months ahead of time, we were on the phone talking to him. He said, "I got this figured out. We'll do this." And he was on it, man. He handled it very well. And so he said, we have to rent some kayaks. We need 8 kayaks. And so in Greenland, they have the kayaks that they rent to some of the tourists. There's places you can get. Because the Greenland skin-off frames, there's not enough space in there to go camping in them. So he was going to get some of these kayaks. And so he's working out the budget. And he said, this is going to cost us 8 kayaks for 3 weeks. It's about $12,000. And I said, wait, $12,000? Can't we buy? I mean, and these are plastic kayaks. They're not the high-performance fiberglass kayaks. What would it cost us to buy some used plastic kayaks? I mean, come on. Well, the problem is you have to get them to Greenland. There goes your budget. And you really can't do better than what he was quoted. And he's a Greenlander, so he would get the good deal. But it was going to cost us $12,000. So all right, we'll deal with that. That's how it goes. He had the budget figured out, and he was telling everybody about how we would do the food and the tents, sleeping bags, and the whole bit. Figuring out the route, and you got weather considerations and everything. And so at some point he said, he'd gotten contacted through, maybe it was the Greenland kayak group or somebody. The word came, there's a TV crew coming to do a filming of, I've been involved a lot of times in there, and somebody's doing a documentary and they want it. And I can, at least in English, I can sort of do the alibak, tell people, this is how this competition works. These are what the different roles are. And that's a good competitor. That's, or tell them, this race won't be a big deal, but the next race is the one you want to see. And just provide competent, intelligent, information about things. So it's always good to have, extra publicity for an event. So if somebody's going to come and do some TV thing about the Greenland kayaking, it's great. There's the heritage of the seal hunters. We certainly want to promote that. That's what QAJAQ USA is all about. So he said they would be coming at some point, and we could help whatever assistance they needed. So that was cool. So we get there to Greenland, and we had some setup to do ahead of time, and the first group came, and we went to the tourist place to go over the kayaks, check out, because we're going to be out in the wilderness. You can't just call for rescue and so on. It's, you're out there, and I was trusting that he knew the area and he'd had experience, because I wouldn't by myself take people out in Greenland, but he knew it all. So we're looking at the kayaks, and they're pretty beat up, and they're these big barge things with rudders on them, and some of them the rudder cable's not working, and some of them are missing hatch covers, some of them the seats not there, and we're like, we got maybe 5 or 6 working kayaks here. The other ones are not going to cut it. We're not going to go out for 5 days, and the people there say, we have some more kayaks, but they're in another town over. We can have a guy bring them for you. And we said, all right, yeah, well, we need some more kayaks. So they said, all right. So maybe it was a Tuesday, and they were going to bring them maybe Tuesday, but Tuesday they didn't get there. So we wanted to start paddling Wednesday morning. And so Thursday morning we wanted to start paddling. So Wednesday, we're still making some arrangements, and QAJAQ had his hands full, with us, so we had a place to stay. before we went out camping, and he was a great host, and he's making sure we got the right food and learning how to get around the town and making us feel welcome. So Wednesday night comes and still no kayaks. And so Malikak's on his phone calling them, come on. And they say, oh, tomorrow morning the guy's coming. He's come. You bring him by boat because there are no roads between the towns in Greenland. It's you either fly or you go by water. So the guy's got his motorboats coming. He's coming. He's coming. All right. So Thursday morning, the other kayaks were packing them up, and people are getting ready, and we're down, got all our gear down to the waterfront. And Thursday noon hits, and cause we've got an itinerary to get to, and things. I mean, and we're not going to get caught in the dark because this is Sissimute in July, and it doesn't get dark. The sun just rotates around. It's always daylight, but still, we have. And when you get out there, it's true in most places. The calmest, best weather is early in the morning. By the time when the warming temperature of a morning gets that wind going, and you get rough stuff throughout the day. Typically, sometimes it changes that. So a lot of people you hear expedition. We had to get up before dawn and strike the tent to get the good weather before the wind really kicked up. So, like late Thursday afternoon, the guy shows up with the kayaks. So we found out of his 3 or 4 that he brought, 2 of them would be serviceable. So we came up with 8 good kayaks. So we went out, embarked on this trip, and I can tell you the details some other time. People had a great time, a tremendous experience. There are a lot of whales in Asiat. And so people with their cameras got plenty of chances to get the good shot of the whales coming up to the surface. And by the end of the 2 groups that were out there, somebody said, "Oh, look, a whale." I said, "It's just a whale. I mean, come on." So then we come back, everybody had a great time, and then the actual competition's going to start the next day, and so the other teams are arriving there, and when they come, it's always a good, nice to see people you haven't seen for a year, and you consider they're your friends, but. So you see them again, everybody's, big greeting, big hi. And so I'm in I think it was the cafeteria, and Ali Bach comes in with the other group, and he crosses the room, comes over to me, and shakes my hand and gives me a little nod. And later on I said to Malikak, I explained what Ali Bach did. And Malikak said, "Really? Ali Bach did that?" And so, in 2017 was like over 10 years since I'd first seen Ali Bach. It took me 10 years to get some respect out of Ali Bach, but I considered that an achievement. He had seen enough. He'd been checking me out all those years, and the things. I'd show my little video montages the next year, or do my little. I'd been helping with the judging by then, and he finally was going to give me some respect, and I treasured that. So that was a good thing. So then, the TV crew gets there, and they were from some European country, one of those smaller European countries. I won't name the name, but it looked like a fairly sophisticated operation. You could tell by their equipment. They had the guy with the boom microphone thing and the pretty big camera, maybe 1 or 2 cameras, and the crew of 3 or 4 people. And then they had a woman who was the producer, and she was, very businesslike and official, walks around with a clipboard and looking for where they're going to take their next shot. And then they had these two they were the on-screen personalities for the TV show. It was a man and a woman. And, the woman's all got the makeup on, so she looks nice in front of the camera. And so the first order of business, they have, when they start the competition, they have a service at the church, local church, and it's all in Greenlandic, so the foreigners just like me just kind of sit there and nod. But this is, I've learned over time, they are paying tribute to the seal hunters from days gone by, who many of them gave up their lives, died out hunting seals. It's a dangerous occupation. So we pay tribute to them, because without them we wouldn't have this wonderful kayak that we have today. And then they lay a wreath on a gravestone marker to honor and even honoring the people who since they started the competition, who have passed away. And I've been going long enough, so I've I knew some of these people that they're talking about, and so I share in the sympathy of regretting that they're no longer with us. And I don't recall that the film crew bothered to come with the church thing. They weren't focused on that. But so for the competition, everybody's got a competition number. I've explained this in some previous Dubcasts. And so this year they had these nice stretch jerseys with the number printed on it. Some years they're not quite as sophisticated, but they had these jerseys. And so I was sort of running the organizing of the foreigners for the competition. So the Greenlanders at the meetings for these things, they said they had a pile of these jerseys. Said Dubside, these are for the foreigners. You can distribute them to the people that they go to. So I went back to where at the school. There's usually the school that's not being used in the summertime. They'll use that to house the competitors, and each team gets a different classroom. And so the foreigners had one area. So I went back to give that. The TV crew didn't stay with the school. They kind of didn't associate with us after hours, as it were. But it's not in the school. You get to interact with the other teams and the people and you socialize. So I went to find the TV crew folks and had the two numbers for them, for the man and the woman, and I gave them the numbers. And they said, hold on, we have to get this on camera. So I said, all right. So let's get the camera up and running, and they said, okay, now go ahead. And here's your competition number for the man and the woman. Okay, they had to get that scene in their production. So the first day is usually the short distance race. It's about 5 miles, depending on how they lay it out. But the men have a longer distance. They shorten it for the women, and the kids have an even shorter distance. And there are all these different competition categories. There's the 20 to 34-year-old group is the main competition. And there's a 49 to 50 and over 60, and then the kids, there's various teenage groups. And so these go on at different times. They may combine like the older teens with the older adults, but the 20 to 34 get the long distance, and that's a separate thing. And they always the men and women go separately. It's always done that way. Even when they have the team race, you can't mix. You can have boys and men on one team, but you can't have girls mixing with boys, or you have to keep those separate. So the TV crew team, they had to have the man and woman in the same race, which is kind of not how it's done, but that's how they wanted to do it. So they had the women in with the guy racing in the men's race. And so we just that's we sort of put up with that. And so they take off, ready, set, go. And the Greenlanders, they're much faster. So these two guys are sort of trailing the end of the man and the woman. And the film crew is all focused on them and kept getting the footage from them. I mean, I suppose, that's they wanted to get that shot. So, but they weren't at the finish line when the first guys crossed, because that wasn't what they were looking for. So the rolling event was coming up later on in the week. And so they asked QAJAQ for some help with the rolling, for coaching, I guess, ahead of time. And so the area where they had the staging for the competition was sort of at the end of town. It was a long walk to get there, or if you could find a ride. Cars were in short supply. But at the end of town, it's kind of a hillside, and there's they have the steel containers with the kayaks from the other teams that they bring and park there. And there's a container for the judges. It's sort of sprawled across this hillside, and people have set up their little areas for the different teams. So QAJAQ had to get all the way out there. He had plenty of other things to worry about, trying to coordinate two groups to go camping with. But he went out there. I went with him, and we got so the women, the woman in the TV person, she could do one roll, I believe, just a regular standard roll. The guy couldn't, or he had rolled years and years ago in one of those kind of situations. So he wanted some help to try to get his roll back. So we said, okay, we'll work with you. So imagine this is one guy, and his two instructors are QAJAQ and Dubside. Well, the water's really cold, and the guy is not used to a small skin on frame kayak, and he was not doing too well. And I can't remember if he barely got one roll almost or not, but Maligak stayed in a kayak in the water with him to rescue him every time he missed it. And after, I don't know, half an hour, 45 minutes, you reach that point where it's just not productive to keep going, and he was ready to quit. So we had to leave it at that. And the woman, as I recall, she didn't seem to have any inclination to learn any of the roles on the Greenland list. She just had her one, probably a C2C role, and was going to leave it at that. But we said, all right. So the next day, there was I think there was another race, and they had Maligak. They were asking him every time they needed help with something they were maybe setting up some shot on down by the water, and so at the competition, they'll have usually a PA system. Sometimes it's just a battery powered bullhorn, but usually it's like some speakers set up, and they'll often play Greenlandic music through the speakers between the announcements. Because the Greenlanders, they're big on their music, and as in my Dubcast, I've tried to give you examples of Greenlandic music. Those are some of the songs that you'll hear over the speakers. Someone will take their cell phone out and plug it into the sound system, and they'll play music. So this is modern genres of music done by Greenlanders, sung in Greenlandic is their thing. And then the kayak song is featured usually every day at some point. But this year we had a very special treat. There was a group of 3 or 4 people who came and set up on the top of the hillside with a little PA system and a guitar, I think it was electric guitar, and an accordion, and people singing, and they performed live music for us, which is very, very nice to have that. We thought that was really cool. So the TV crew is down by the water, and they've got Maligak over there to give them a hand. And the producer, the very businesslike woman with the clipboard, she says, "Okay, we're gonna take this shot here. So Maligak, could you go tell the band to stop playing? We need to get our shot here." And Maligak said, "No, I'm not going to tell them that. It's very, very special for them to come and play. Well, I'm not going to tell them to stop playing." And the woman says, "Well, I'll go tell them then." She walks up the hill and she says, "You need to stop playing because we're and then being very polite Greenlanders, they stopped playing." But Maligak, as he told me later, we were discussing, that was really not cool to be doing that. You're not that important that you have to. But that's what they did.
I hope these people aren't English.
No. So the next day, it became apparent that the rolling competition was going to be held towards the end of the week. The film crew was only there for 3 or 4 days. So they could see on their schedule they wouldn't be there when the actual rolling was done. So they said, we need to shoot a rolling scene of the woman and the man rolling ahead of time. And at this point, the Greenland organizers, who friends of both Maligak and I, we've known the people in charge of that as it's changed hands over the years. They at this point it's the whole TV crew. They just dumped it on Maligak and me. Well, you guys deal with these foreigners, and you guys speak English, so we're not going to worry about it. So we were supposed to judge, stage like a judge rolling the man between the woman kind of a thing. And so we realized that we'd have to have Maligak stay in the water in a kayak because the guy didn't have a reliable role if he could even get one. So he would need to be rescued. And so the film crew, I guess they wanted 2 judges that they thought would be the way it's done. I mean, sometimes in Greenland, one guy will judge by himself, but or maybe it was because I didn't look like a Greenlander. They wanted like the Greenlander look, so they said I could be that. But so they got Ali Bach to be another judge, and so they said, well, we want to do it where the it'll just be, because we were ready to call out the names in Greenlandic, that's how it's done, and check off what they could do. And there's a minimum qualifying score. It's like 30 points for the women and 50 points for the men. And like one standard Greenland roll is 2 points. If you do it on the second side, it's another 2 points. And I don't think we even had the chance to explain that to them. They just said, "Oh, well, it'll just be as many rolls as the woman does. She gets that many points." And the guy, if he does a roll or two, he gets that many points. So we want Ali Bach to hold up that many fingers, and Dubside, you just say, call out, okay, it's 3 points, and like write down like you're writing on a score sheet, it's that many points. And we're thinking, that's not really how we do things here, but it's your movie, whatever. So, but it was, they're not. If she does a roll on one side and the other side, she gets 4 points. That's nowhere near 30 points. I mean, she wouldn't even qualify for a medal. But they want to make it like. So at this point, I think I'd found out that they weren't really doing a documentary about Greenland kayaking. This was their TV show was kind of a reality show where the man and the woman are in this rivalry competing against each other. And they go to various exotic places and find some sort of thing to compete in, and then they see who wins, and then I guess they have the big, rivalry follow-up after that. So I was about ready to tell these people to go take a hike. It's like you want us to fit the rules around you. You want us to move our schedule to make it at your convenience. You want to shut down our special entertainment. You seem to have no interest in, the historical stuff in the museum or going to the church service or anything. This is not really cool. I mean, what you folks are doing amounts to cultural strip mining, in my view. But then I thought, well, I'm a foreign here as well. And so is it my call to make this? And I think, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to let Ali Bach be the canary in the coal mine for me. If Ali Bach is okay with this, if they can convince him to go along with it, to raise up his fingers like it's going to, somebody in Danish had explained it to him what they wanted him to do. If he's cool with it, I'll go along with it. He'll be the test. All right. So they got Ali Bach to do it. Yeah, he said, okay, held up his fingers, and I said, okay, that's 2 points, and wrote down the 2 points, and then that's how they did. And they got their footage, and then they wrapped it up and went off with their cameras. I said, all right. So the next day, I think they asked Maligiak for help with the harpoon throwing, and I was busy with other things. I didn't make the trek all the way out to where the staging area was, but he came back later, and he said, oh, they kept me there for way too long. They couldn't throw a harpoon very well, so they wanted me to throw it, and they'll just shoot that at landing in the target, and then they'll splice that into them launching the harpoon, and he was, he'd been grumbling to me about them for quite some time now, but he's too nice a guy to just tell them, you get out of here. But he put up with all that, and they got this. However, they doctored up the harpoon throw to make it look like the man and the woman threw harpoons, and so then the next day they finally left, and we were so happy to get rid of them. And so I started to rethink my decision to follow Ali Bach's lead, because it occurred to me that in the mind of the average Greenlander, all the foreigners are in the same category. You people show up here, you don't speak our language, and you come with your cameras and you take stuff. Right. And so, any bad feelings this crew left behind would eventually come around and influence me, because I'm just like them to the average Greenlander, come in as a foreigner, tourist kind of a thing. And so I think it would have been more appropriate for me to take those people aside and say, look, I don't support what you people are doing. I think you're being very rude here. You don't realize how much you've inconvenienced, how many feathers you have ruffled here. And, it's not my country to kick you out of. It's not my competition to ban you from. But if that motion is afoot, I will support it wholeheartedly, and I am not going to help you any further, and walked off and left them. But I didn't do that. And so I don't know. I never saw their final production, what their episode looked like, but I can kind of imagine. I don't even know the name of what the show was or the names of the people, but I kind of imagine anybody, if they did make a final episode that aired, the impression you would get of Greenland kayaking would be so far removed from actual Greenland kayaking, and there had been not at all honoring the heritage of seal hunters and everything. It's just another exotic location, and the next week they're off in Spain bullfighting or Nepal mountain climbing or doing trampling on some other culture. So that is a not so pleasant interaction, and one that in the future I think I'll take a more proactive role in shutting down before it gets too far. And so that is how not to go to Greenland. But do we have a question here?
Yeah. Did you ever get any feedback from Ali Bach afterwards?
No. Yeah. Well, he didn't speak English, so I didn't really have a conversation with him. I didn't. I should ask Maligiak about if he
After you gained his respect, he lost a little of yours.
I don't know. I mean, I can imagine, even like for the musicians, even a film crew, a professional-looking film crew with all this fancy stuff looks pretty intimidating. Like if Hollywood people showed up and to any of us here with, I'm going to be in a movie, really? Oh, okay. And then they want you to jump through hoops. We'd start jumping through hoops.
Yeah, I thought there were going to be cameras, man. I'm a little disappointed. I'm not going to be on.
It's a podcast. It's not a video thing.
Did you get a thank you letter
From who?
the film crew?
Of course not. No. They weren't paying. They were not paying us anything.
They probably didn't even say thanks before they left.
Yeah, I think I imagine that people like that. They have a professional job to do. They're not looking at the big picture. They're just, I got to go here. I got to get this shot. I got to get, and they can trample on feet and bump elbows all day long without even thinking about it. And they're on to the next country after that, and it's leaves a very bad taste.
That's probably used to people just catering to them because they're coming with the film crew.
Yeah.
This is something important when it's really not necessarily.
Yeah. Now I have been there when other people came that were really doing a real documentary about things and wanted an explanation of things and did it respectfully, and that was cool. I certainly support that. But these folks that is not the way to go to Greenland. Yeah. Well, I see we have airplanes in the distance still. So
you two sparkling.
So I may edit this down, and I don't know how long we've been going. I haven't looked at my clock, but anyway, this is going to be the outro music of the Dubcast. So until next time, this is Dubside signing off of the Dubcast with my live audience. Thank you, everybody. All right.
Do a roll for us.
Next time I'm bringing a film crew so I can do a documentary about it.
I'm going to have to leave in all these comments from the Peanut Gallery, part of the entertainment. And this is Dubside back in the studio a week later, editing down what I've got. And I did leave in those comments from the Peanut Gallery. But I realized I neglected to include a musical selection. So I'm going to throw in a very short piece here right now. And this is something of a kid's song in the category of Old MacDonald Had a Farm. This is a Greenlandic song called Pisuttuapunga.
Pisuttuapunga e kasalerama Enesima sutushla kutsumuna tonesut Pasile para ulapita kisut Asegine gisunik sulia kashtutik Naluara di maliopok.
And that is the song. I said it was short, didn't I? That's actually just the first verse. It's one of those songs you make up additional verses as you go. And there's a version of that song on a DVD. It's one of those music DVDs. They have a couple of those in Greenland. And the one I am talking about is called Nuan, N-U-A-N. And there are some other artists on that CD that I've given you samples of in earlier Dubcasts. There's a Karsok, that was from Dubcast number 8, and Kishima from 19, and Tuparnok from 27. Anyway, those three people are on this music DVD doing other songs of theirs. And at the end, in the bonus part of this DVD, there's a guy on there, and he's doing a live performance of this song I just did, this Pisuttuapunga. And it's you have to understand some of the Greenlander, but it's really funny what he does with that. So that's DVD Nuon. I don't know if that is in print at the moment, but you can try greenlandicmusic.gl. They have other music DVDs if they don't have that one. Well, thank you for indulging me with this new way to record the Dubcast using a live audience. And I think the experiment worked okay. I may try that again in the future. You'll want to listen in next time when the subject is kayaking at night. All the adventures and fun you can have paddling after the sun goes down in episode 36 of the Dubcast with Dubside.